Hello, welcome to Morley TV. Today we're going to talk about one of the subjects that I'm really into, which is generative content. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks to make generative content along the lines of this, and hopefully convert you into using generative content. Probably not on its own. There's still a space for rendered clips that do things that you couldn't do with generative content. But there's a lot of stuff that is out there in clip format that could easily be replaced with generative content, saving you tons of hard drive space and enabling you to manipulate these things live and change them on the spot if you so want. Let's get into it. So here we are. I've got BPM Audio Shape 7.22 available from Gumroad, link in the description, which is what I'm going to use to do all these demonstrations. It's got to be said that you don't need to use this. Most of the tricks that I'm going to drive you through are applicable to most generative content, whether it's coming from plugins or whether you've made it yourself. Something to note here is that what BPM Audio Shapes does in a package plugin format is actually doable 100% entirely from within Resolume just by stacking sources and effects. If you experiment with your sources, be assured that you can make stunning content straight from Resolume. And once you've done that, you can apply these techniques to whatever it is that you're doing to spice things up and make endless, infinite, ever-changing content that you can manipulate for the entire rest of your VJ career, always making new things and building up on all the work that you've done previously. So here we are, BPM Audio Shapes. This is the default preset that runs when you first load BPM Audio Shapes into Resolume. So trick number one, which is a very obvious one, is to animate parameters. Some parameters will give you more depth and more mileage, and it's all a matter of finding out which parameters you want to animate. But I'm very quickly going to do a demonstration here. So here's BPM Audio Shapes, and we've got here the shape. Shape is selected as asterisk. So although it's a drop-down menu, you get that cogwheel, you can animate this. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to open that. We're going to select BPM sync. Then we are going to start settings, clip trigger. And now this is running through all the different shapes. Now this is set to 4 beats and we've got more than 4 shapes. So it's not going to correspond with the BPM. So one thing we can do is limit the shapes that it's going through because we might not want all of them. So many ways of doing this. The first one is just to use the brackets here to just select and limit what you're doing. So now it's going through 4. So it's 4 beats through 4. Let's make it faster. Even faster, even faster. So basically now we've got something that is a lot more dynamic. Now, another way to do this would be to use an envelope here. Rather than limiting there, you can use an envelope and then it doesn't need to be linear. Right now, we're going through the first 4 shapes. But what if you just want to do the first shape, the 5th shape, and the 7th shape, for example? Well, what you do is you set up an envelope. Let's open the bracket again. And then just to speed things up, I'm going to start off by using the digital one because we want to be able to just jump straight from one value to the other. So let's just say a way to actually do this and speed up your workflow is to pause that, move your timeline setting here. And we see that here, this value is the pentagon. Then you can move over to this value and just move up slowly to see which shape you're selecting. And then you can move over to this one and see which one you're selecting there. And then move over here and leave it there. So then just press play again. So now you've selected the shapes you want to be using. So that's tip number 1. So here's tip number 2, which builds upon the previous tip, but it's also about animating parameters. But this time the tip is about animating parameters to very long cycles. What this does is it creates a slowly evolving animation rather than for a beat or whatever it might be. This is good so that you've got a base that is slowly evolving. So you can concentrate on other things as it will slowly evolve over time. So one thing we could easily evolve over time here is, for example, the color. So if we open the color and go to our HSB setting, so we can now animate the hue. Again, let's go to BPM sync, and now it's like going quite fast to that. But if we increase the number of beats, we can maybe go up to 16 or 32, whatever it might be. You can really go for very, very, very long evolving clips. Obviously, you might want to spend some time actually watching the evolution to make sure that it is what you want, which takes a fair bit of time. So let's just keep it not too long, not too short, just for the demonstration purposes. It's going to leave it at 32. So another thing that we could animate, bearing in mind that we're doing a long cycle, is the global scale. You can always display with a parameter with the slider itself to see what it does, to decide what you're doing with it. So global scale, I think, is a good one for long cycle. So BPM sync again, and then we can go for 128. So we can see this slow evolution where the colors are gradually changing and the overall scale is gradually changing. It's not immediately obvious if you just sit there for a couple of seconds watching, but you see it cycling again. So we've got this slowly evolving animation. So what we've seen so far is just a few tips, but in a very basic kind of example. As obviously, the more time you spend tweaking your envelopes and your animation, the more complex and the more exciting that they become. Let's jump into the next tip. So once we've got this longer cycle, we've got so 128 beats, 32 beats. So it's quite long in the scheme of things. What you can actually do is make smaller cycles within that go with the beat maybe. So if we go, for example, to the echo parameter, let's just see what happens. So that's off. That's on. As you can see, it increases the number of shapes and everything. And let's maybe change the color to complementary, so this is a bit more obvious. So now this button-based parameter here, this can also be animated. If I go to left-hand side, so you get a cogwheel. So that is something that is very interesting to bear in mind when you're animating your parameters. You can pretty much animate almost anything that appears within the settings of your source or within your effect. So now if we go again to BPM sync, so you see we've got this switching on and off. It's on 4 beats, but if we do it on the beat, for example, because, well, it's 2 of them, so it's every 2 beats. So now we've got this shorter cycle within the longer evolution, which means that we've got some elements that are synced to the actual beat of whatever is playing. And we've also got an evolution going on, which could match whatever else is happening in the music, whether it's a filter sweep or it's some stabs or some chords that change. When you animated things, have a balance between longer cycles and shorter cycles so that you structure things in the same way that music is structured, which is beats, bars, and phrases, for example. So for a last tip is to use FFT when you're using generative content, because it really helps to make things go with the flow of the music without you having to be focusing on doing that yourself. So we've got this here, just cycling through the shapes. And if you look at my global scale over here, I've assigned that to composition FFT here. So if I trigger this beat, you can see how it instantly reacts to what's going on, which allows you to be focusing on doing other things. This layer would be taking care of itself. And if there's a complete drop on the beat while the music is playing, you don't need to worry about it because this is going to react accordingly. You can do this with effects when you're applying them to video clips, but the beauty of using generative sources rather than video clips is that you've got a lot more control over what the reaction to the music is. It's not just going to be a parameter and effect going up and down. You can actually manipulate the entire animation to make it do different things. So it's way more versatile, and it allows you to have a lot more control over what the music is doing to your animation. So those are a few tips to consider next time you're using any generative source to make it more interesting and a bit more reactive to the music and expand the possibilities of it outside of the strict 4 beats, 8 beats kind of looping animation. I'm going to leave you with this video, which was made using BPM audio shapes and which demonstrates the techniques that I've been putting through in this tutorial in a more involved manner. As always, please like and subscribe. It really does help my channel and it helps me to keep going with the tutorials. So I really appreciate it. Hopefully, I'll see you next time.